Well, welcome back to our study of the book of Daniel. This week, you'll focus in on Daniel chapter 6. The chapter describes an event later in Daniel's life. It's another familiar Sunday school story if you grew up going to church, Daniel and the lion's den. You're going to read about the details in your study this week. But at this point in his life, Daniel has been in exile for at least 60 years. Given that, we can deduce that he is at least in his late 70s or early 80s. What's so wonderful about this story and the others we've already read is Daniel's consistency. Living in a pagan culture, Daniel has managed to maintain his faith. This has been his lifelong dedication. So, when yet another decree goes out, this time to pray to the king as though he were a god, it shouldn't surprise us that Daniel remains faithful to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Daniel is not easily swayed, and his faith is solidly built on the one true God. No matter how dangerous the situation, Daniel knows to whom he is ultimately loyal. He knows the immediate stakes are high. He is facing a life and death situation. But Daniel also realizes that there are eternal stakes much higher, and he's not gambling with his eternal future by compromising. Daniel and his friends have given us a blueprint of how to live within a godless culture. They have unapologetically and uncompromisingly demonstrated obedience to God. They have been respectful of those in charge, but have never bowed to these rulers as gods. They have learned about the culture they're living in, but they have not adopted the cultural practices. They have firmly maintained their devotion to God, trusting God with the outcome, even when threatened with death. Now, you and I don't face the same kinds of threats in our godless society today. But isn't it interesting that so often we really fret over things like being called names like bigot, narrow-minded, or even simple because of our faith? We fear losing popularity and losing friends. We fear no longer being included in the cool activities or being canceled entirely. We are coming to the close of the first part of Daniel's book. These first 6 chapters have shown us faith in action when the going gets tough. Daniel has recorded for us the ways that he coped during duress as an exile. Obedience, faith, and prayer were his secret weapons. Now, in the second half of his book, Daniel is going to recount for us some visions and dreams that he had during his captivity. He's no longer going along a linear timeline. He's taken a step back as if to say, hey, I've just told you about what happened to me, and as amazing as that was, it's time for me to tell you about what God revealed during my captivity. In the remaining chapters, we're going to learn about visions that Daniel saw about the future. Some of these things have been fulfilled, but others remain in the future. Daniel has already been proven as an authentic prophet. We've seen the first prophecies fulfilled with the turnover from the Babylonian Empire to the Medo-Persian Empire. Next would be the rise of the Greek Empire, followed by the Roman Empire. But there is one final world empire that is yet to arrive. We need to pay attention to what Daniel will show us in the remaining chapters. Not to get too far ahead, but when Daniel saw these visions, he was alarmed. That's a lot coming from a guy who was thrown into a den of hungry lions. We would be wise to take a page from Daniel's playbook. Our culture is godless too. Now is the time to determine how we're going to face it. Will we unapologetically and uncompromisingly demonstrate obedience to God? Can we find the balance between being respectful of those in charge, but never bowing to false gods? Can we be students of our culture to understand it without adopting their godless practices? Will we firmly maintain our devotion to God, trusting Him with the outcome, even when threatened with death or other unpleasantries? Joshua was right to challenge the people of Israel with these words as they entered the promised land. Now, therefore, fear the Lord and serve Him in sincerity and truth, and do away with the gods which your fathers served beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if it is disagreeable in your sight to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves today whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served, which were beyond the Euphrates River, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. This same challenge that Joshua gave the people of Israel was appropriate for Daniel in his context, and it's appropriate for us in our context. As far as Daniel was concerned, even in exile, he would serve the Lord. I hope we will also declare, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.